tensions are escalating now in the Middle East. Syria is threatening to retaliate against Israel after airstrikes that left a huge explosion outside of Damascus. The Israelis say that they're shipping dangerous weapons to Hezbollah in Lebanon.
That's right, and our Chris Mitchell has the story. He's in Israel.
Well,
Syria's foreign minister said Israel's alleged airstrikes on targets near Damascus are a declaration of war. Israel reportedly carried out 2 aerial strikes in 48 hours to destroy what were described as game-changing weapons. That includes advanced Iranian Fateh 110 missiles with a range of 180 miles. Iran was shipping them through Syria to Hezbollah in Lebanon. The attacks highlighted growing Iranian involvement in Syria and the region. The feeling here in Jerusalem is that any retaliation will be decided in Tehran by Iran's mullahs, rather than in Damascus by the Assad regime.
Syria cannot retaliate without an approval of Iran, and also Hezbollah. Only Iran can approve, because Iran is a great supporter, sending the weapons.
Israel moved Iron Dome anti-missile batteries to protect northern Israel. But on Monday, Israelis on the Golan Heights and elsewhere were taking the situation in stride. Officially, the Israeli government has neither confirmed nor denied the airstrikes. Israeli Tourism Minister Uzi Landau said it was Israel's policy not to allow a certain kind of weapon to reach the hands of terrorists. Beyond that, many question how the U.S. should respond.
The whole situation is becoming more and more expansive, and unfortunately, the red line that the President of the United States written was apparently written in disappearing ink.
I think the President needs to make it clear what we will do, and he's already tried to do that with his bright red line, which he hadn't followed through on. So I don't know what his steps should be right now, but clearly his indecisiveness has destabilized and probably brought Israel into this.
For now, the bloody civil war in Syria continues, and Iran's power is increasing. But after the weekend attacks, it's clear Israel is ready to act if it feels its security is threatened. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, there's no way Syria is going to go to war. They are not about to go to war, not in the situation they're in right now. The question is, if somebody goes in and starts hammering on Assad's forces, does that mean the radical leftists will win? Who is going to win? Who is the opposition? And we don't know. So I know there are a lot of voices saying that the president is indecisive and he ought to do something. Well, I'm not sure what he ought to do, and I don't think anybody else. So I think in this case, a little indecision isn't a bad thing. Well, folks, we've been talking for months about the state of our criminal justice system. We had a series called A Nation of Criminals that people watched. And I understand now from the head of the House Judiciary Committee that there are 500 new federal crimes added every decade, 500. And they have taken away what's called mens rea, which is the idea of you know that you're committing a crime. These are accidental acts, and some people aren't even aware they're committing crimes. They can wind them up in jail. Well, finally, Congress is about to tackle that huge criminal code. The code is so widespread that every American has broken some law somewhere. They say anybody over 18 has broken some law. And Lee Webb has more from the CBN newsroom. Here's Lee.
Pat, lawmakers in Congress are looking for ways to lighten America's burdensome criminal code. CBN News, as Pat just mentioned, reported in our Nation of Criminals series numerous cases of ordinary Americans being charged with seemingly petty crimes. Critics say Congress creates so many criminal laws that it's too easy to violate one and never know it. Now the Wall Street Journal reports the House is creating a panel to fight the problem. It's called the Overcriminalization Task Force of 2013. Congressman Jim Sensenbrenner is leading that group. He wants to cut back the massive criminal code by 1/3. He says overcriminalization is a threat to personal liberty, an expensive and inefficient way to deal with a lot of problems. New signs that America is starting to rise from its economic doldrums. The nation saw stronger than expected job creation in April. And recent dramatic discoveries of vast U.S. oil and gas reserves are boosting the economy. The good economic news highlights the importance of private sector innovation rather than government policy. The job growth came from private companies. It also came as government jobs were being cut. The news sent the Dow to an all-time high Friday, breaking the 15,000 mark for the first time. And it provides Republicans with fresh support in their call for smaller government and fewer regulations on business. Encouraging, Pat?
It's extremely encouraging. You know, there's an interesting article in the Wall Street Journal about two states. One state is California. It's the largest state, I believe, by population in America. The other is the state of Texas. Texas is growing. Texas is prospering. Texas has a huge budget surplus. Texas is creating jobs as fast as you can imagine. Why? Because they've opened up their tremendous resources of oil, especially the Eagle Ford Shale and then other shales, the Barnett and others that they are exploiting. And they've made it easy to drill, easy to get permits, because they like oil and gas. California, on the other side, is suffering huge high taxes, unemployment rate off the charts, suffering in misery. Why? Because the environmentalists don't like natural gas. They don't like fossil fuels. They go for the green jobs, and green jobs aren't working. It was an amazing thing that indeed California, with riches beyond belief, are turning away from them so they can suffer. And Texas is saying, bring it on, we like it, and we're for business and free enterprise, and especially the oil and gas industry. Interesting contrast. Lee.
Pat, leaders of the National Rifle Association say the gun lobby is ready for a long culture war. The NRA held its annual convention in Houston this weekend, and the question was asked, how many Bostonians wish they had a gun 2 weeks ago? Ephraim Graham has the convention wrap-up.
The NRA and gun control opponents won the first round against the White House with the defeat of the gun control bill in the U.S. Senate last month.
A Senate vote less than 2 weeks ago is significant.
However, NRA leaders are taking it one step at a time, not becoming overly optimistic.
We must never confuse winning a battle with winning the war.
And explaining why Americans should own a firearm.
Guns save lives. Guns protect our mothers, our wives, our daughters, our children.
The NRA focused its criticism at President Obama's push for new gun control laws.
You know, Obama is meeting and plotting with the who's who of the gun ban movement.
NRA leaders also targeted New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg's more than $10 million investment to help prevent illegal guns from getting on the streets.
And we will never be scared of a billionaire.
For gun control supporters, a former White House aide recommends following the NRA's strategy.
Organize as the NRA does and make it a voting issue.
The White House continues to reference the innocent children of Newtown, Connecticut and their grieving parents.
And all I can remember is that awful day.
That strategy did not work in the fight for background checks in the Senate. So this weekend, victims of gun violence confronted NRA members at their own convention to try to find common ground. In the meantime, the White House will continue to push Congress. The Obama administration also continues to look into what the president might be able to do on his own to bypass congressional approval. Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
Turning overseas now, a bomb blast at a church in the African nation of Tanzania killed one person and injured dozens more. Eyewitnesses say a motorcyclist tossed the bomb into a Catholic church in Arusha. The Vatican ambassador to Tanzania was in the church at the time to celebrate its official opening. He was not hurt. The motorcyclist was arrested. His motive unclear, but Muslim extremists have carried out attacks against Christians in Tanzania in recent months. Authorities in Malaysia are investigating the apparent murder of an American pastor in Kuala Lumpur. The Reverend David Ginter is seen here with his wife and two adopted children. He grew up in the Portland, Oregon area. He's been in Malaysia since 2010, serving as pastor of the Bridge International Church. Friends found him in his home Saturday with his hands and legs bound and a cell phone charger wrapped around his neck. His car was missing. Police say they have no motive or suspects in the crime. A court in Ecuador has stripped a former presidential candidate of all political rights for saying publicly that homosexuals can change. Now the evangelical politician could be sent to prison for hate crimes. John Waggy has more.
A month after Ecuador's presidential elections, the Electoral Litigation Court stripped former candidate Nelson Zavala of all political rights. The evangelical pastor, who represented the Roladista party in last February's elections, may not vote or serve in any public office for an entire year. The court also fined Zavala more than $3,000 for his comments about homosexuals.
This landmark case should cause the Ecuadorian people to reflect on fundamentalist and reactionary public speech.
According to the prosecution, Zavala spoke against the community of gays, lesbians, bisexuals, transgenders, transsexuals, and transvestites. Here's what he said in a television interview.
When the government is incapable of solving the problem of homosexuality, it simply legalizes it. Okay, I understand. But as Christians with 112 years of history in Ecuador and 2,000 years on earth, we have shown over and over that homosexuality can be changed. Today, in our churches, there are pastors who used to be homosexuals.
The candidate's sentencing prompted celebrations in the homosexual community. Zavala also faces a possible prison sentence of up to 3 years for committing a hate crime.
Full protection is granted to minority groups, but we are seeing that somehow they are not being totally fair to us, the representatives of the church in our country.
Zavala plans to appeal his conviction. John Waggy, CBN News.
Pat, as we mentioned, he's an evangelical, but you'd think the Roman Catholic population down there would stand up for him.
I cannot believe it. Latin America has been a solidly Christian region. It's been Catholic, as you pointed out, Roman Catholic, but nevertheless it's Christian. And the church is very clear about this. And for somebody to say that a homosexual can change, that somehow is a hate crime. It is a hate crime to say somebody can change their sexual preference, that's a hate crime. That's what's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen. We ought to mark that down and fight for freedom, because that man's freedom of speech is being taken away. And the idea that anybody who has ministered to thousands of people, as undoubtedly he has and others have in that church in Ecuador, know very well that the power of God can change people's orientation. A murderer can change. A rapist can change. A thief can change. That's what the gospel is all about. It's not a hate crime. Lee?
A Kentucky high school says prayer will not be part of its graduation ceremony this year. The ban comes after 6 graduating seniors at Lincoln County High School objected to the prayer. One of those students claims to be an atheist and doesn't believe religion should be forced on him. But senior class president Jonathan Hardwick is speaking out against the ban. He says officials can't stop him from praying on his own, and he plans to do so. We are glad to report there was plenty of prayer at Regent University's commencement Saturday. It was a cool, drizzly morning here Saturday, but that didn't put a damper on Regent's 33rd commencement.
This past weekend, family and friends gathered in the Regent University Library Plaza to witness the commissioning of over 1,000 graduates. Regent University has 7 graduate schools and a school of undergraduate studies with courses on campus and online.
If you were with us last year, you may recall it was 81 degrees and sunny, and someone prayed and said, Lord, next year, don't let it be so sunny. Don't let it be so warm. So whomever that person was, please stand and be recognized.
This year's commencement keynote speaker was Ryan T. Anderson, a fellow at the Heritage Foundation in Washington, D.C.
The world may not always want to hear the truth, but only the truth will set us free. Only in the truth is authentic freedom to love possible. Live out the truth of what you've learned at Regent, and you will set the world ablaze.
Regent University founder and chancellor Dr. Pat Robertson addressed the graduates.
Be strong and very courageous, for the Lord your God goes with you wherever you go. be strong and very courageous, and the giants will fall at your feet as you move in to take the land. God bless you.
Beautiful ceremony. Pat, I know you're so pleased to see what God has done at Regent University over the years.
It's amazing. That gives us about 17,500 graduates out in all walks of life all around the world, making a difference. Christian leadership to change the world, and little by little it's happening. So it was a beautiful ceremony, a light drizzle, but nothing serious.
Yeah, watching how they were protected by those mortar boards, you now understand why they were created that way.
That's right. So the rain to come down on either side of your face.
Off your shoulders, right?
Yeah, but it was a lovely ceremony, and you know, it's very colorful. You have all the
very impressive.
The gowns and the robes and the honors that people have achieved over the years, and they have them in those various colors. It's beautiful.
Beautiful.
A California church says it will no longer sponsor a Boy Scout troop in its facilities if the national organization lifts its ban on openly gay scouts. Pastor Robert Hall of Calvary Chapel, Rio Rancho, said he knows other pastors who will do the same. Boy Scouts of America has submitted a plan to allow gay scouts, but not gay scout leaders. Hall took part in a webcast hosted by the Family Research Council Sunday to rally opposition to a vote on that plan May 23rd. The Mormon Church has already approved the plan. The host of CBN's Spanish 700 Club won an award at the annual Eagle Awards. Pastor Hector Hermosillo won Best Host of a Television Program. CBN's Spanish program received a total of 8 nominations at the Eagle Awards. The ceremony is part of a convention of Latin American Christian journalists and communicators from around the world. CBN's Spanish language television programs have been on the air for 35 years, reaching more than 25 countries. You can find out more about what CBN is doing around the world by logging on to cbn.com/international.